Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Global English Podcast. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Taylor.
We are so excited for this deep dive because it hits on something I've personally been thinking about a lot lately.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know that feeling when you're trying to move forward? Maybe you want to finally master conditionals in English, or you want to start exercising consistently, but you just feel completely stuck.
Totally. Stuck in the same place.
Exactly. And you look around and you see other people, and they seem to be successfully making that jump. They turn their lives around. They start speaking English fluently. They get that promotion. They just seem, genuinely happier.
And you're left with that nagging question.
Right. Why isn't that happening for me?
Oh, I recognize that feeling perfectly.
It's often accompanied by this sense of exhaustion because you might be trying really hard, but you're just not seeing the results you feel you deserve.
Yes.
You see someone who went from, say, truly struggling with pronunciation to suddenly speaking with this remarkable clarity, and you just wonder.
What's their secret? Yeah. Did they get lucky? Did they have some huge advantage or some secret motivation that I just missed? It almost feels unfair.
It really does, and it connects so directly to the struggle of learning English, especially when you're at the intermediate B1 stage.
Right.
You've got the basics down, but now the progress has slowed way, way down. You know all the rules, but putting them together in real time feels like trying to build a complex Lego structure with, boxing gloves on.
That is a great analogy. It feels impossible.
It felt so overwhelming, like the gap between where you are and fluency is just too wide to cross in one jump. But then you look back at your own journey and you realize the biggest gains didn't come from those intense all-night study sessions.
No, not at all.
It was little by little, step by consistent step.
And that observation is really the core mission of today's deep dive. We're going to take a rigorous look at this powerful and actually surprisingly simple idea. That big life-altering transformations, whether it's in your personal life, your career, or crucially, your language skills, they are not about one massive, dramatic decision.
Okay.
They're about the consistent, often tiny, micro changes that you commit to making every single day. We're exploring what we call the power of 1% improvement.
And the reason this dive is so important for everyone listening is, it's twofold. First, you'll walk away with practical, actionable steps for driving change in any area of your life.
And second?
And just as important, we are going to build your advanced English vocabulary. We're going to look at the psychology behind progress and give you the tools, the new intermediate level words and phrases to articulate those complex ideas, so you can discuss your progress and your struggles with much greater nuance.
So if you are tired of feeling stuck and you want to understand how to move from feeling paralyzed by your goals to feeling, completely unstoppable, stick with us.
We've got some counterintuitive insights from our source material that might just revolutionize how you approach self-improvement.
But before we get into it,
Yes. Before we unpack our sources, please take a moment right now. Subscribe to the Global English Podcast and like this episode. It is the single 1% improvement you can make today to support our show and help us keep producing these detailed deep dives for you.
okay, let's get into it.
All right, let's start with the hard part. The idea of change, it sounds wonderful, right?
Oh, absolutely. A fresh start, a new beginning.
We love the aspiration, but when it comes down to actually executing that change, starting a new routine, quitting a bad habit, or consistently speaking English, most people just, they crash and burn within the first few weeks. So why? Why is this transition from aspiration to execution inherently so difficult for us?
That's the fundamental question, isn't it? And our source material highlights that most people never make lasting changes because they instinctively run into the same four predictable barriers.
Barriers.
And we need to analyze these obstacles, really dig in, because understanding why you are stuck is the foundational first step to dismantling that paralysis.
Okay, the first one is a big one.
The first, and arguably the most powerful barrier, is the profound fear of failure.
Ah, yes, that internal voice of doubt.
Exactly.
It sounds like this. What if I try to start this new English conversation group and I just fail spectacularly? What if I invest all this time and money and 6 months later, I'm still struggling to understand native speakers?
And that fear is completely paralyzing.
It is. Because the perceived shame, or just the thought of wasting all that effort, is often a greater deterrent than the desire for the actual outcome.
It absolutely is. And this paralyzing fear, it prevents the persistent action that's necessary for growth. But here's the critical reframe.
Okay.
We have to counter that negative internal monologue with a different question.
Which is, but what if you try and succeed?
Exactly. What if this time the effort pays off?
Yeah.
I mean, every single person you admire, every fluent speaker, every successful entrepreneur, they have a graveyard full of failures.
Right.
The key difference isn't that they never failed, it's that they recognize failure not as a final judgment on their ability, but as necessary data.
Ooh, data. I like that.
Yeah, they treated failure as information to adjust their trajectory and persisted.
I think that's such an important point for intermediate learners. You know, when you make a grammar mistake, it feels like a failure.
It does. It feels personal.
But if you see it as information, okay, I messed up the past perfect tense there, now I know which resource to review, that changes the entire emotional weight of the mistake.
It does. It moves from being a sign of personal inadequacy to just a clue on how to get better.
And that is what separates productive failure from paralyzing fear.
Exactly. If you wait until you are 100% sure you won't fail, you will wait forever. It's an exercise in futility.
Okay, so fear of failure is barrier number 1. What's next?
Well, moving on, the second barrier that holds people back is related to planning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lack of direction. People know they want a better life or they want better English, but the goals are they're too vague.
Right. It's this massive undefined aspiration just floating around, and that just creates confusion about where to even start.
And the trap they inevitably fall into is what we call analysis paralysis.
Analysis paralysis. I know this one well.
We all do. They spend weeks or months researching the perfect plan, the best flashcard system, the most efficient grammar textbook, the ideal time of day to study.
And all that research feels productive.
It does. But this obsessive search for perfection is often just another subtle form of procrastination, dressed up as preparation.
That's a hard truth.
It is. The truth, which the sources consistently point to, is that the perfect plan doesn't exist until you start moving. You have to take action, even if the plan is messy, and then adjust your course based on your initial momentum and feedback.
It's the difference between planning to run a marathon and actually putting on your shoes and jogging 1 block.
Exactly.
You can read every book about running and nutrition and training schedules, but until you start moving, you won't clarify which muscle aches or which shoes work or what terrain you prefer.
The movement clarifies the direction, not the other way around.
The movement clarifies the direction. I like that.
And even when people manage to overcome those first 2 barriers and they actually start moving, they often encounter the third, which is entirely internal.
Okay, what is it?
The debilitating power of negative self-talk.
Oh, this barrier is absolutely insidious.
It really is.
That's a powerful intermediate word, by the way. Insidious. It means something that proceeds in a gradual, subtle way, but is ultimately destructive.
And negative self-talk operates insidiously because it attacks your core belief system.
Right. These are the limiting thoughts like, I'll never be good at this, I'm too old to learn a language, or that very specific one.
I'm just not a language person.
Yes, that one.
These mental statements are just so damaging because they become a self-imposed ceiling. I mean, why would you exert maximum effort to improve your English if your inner monologue, your self-talk, has already convinced you that you are fundamentally doomed to fail?
You wouldn't. It preemptively stops progress before the challenge even begins. So let's be really clear about this for everyone listening. When we talk about self-talk, what are we actually talking about?
That's a great question. We're not just talking about being positive. We are talking about the trajectory of your thoughts, your inner monologue, that constant stream of assessments you have about yourself.
So the direction your thoughts are going.
Precisely. If that trajectory is constantly pointing downwards, if it's insidious and destructive, it just drains your energy and makes sustained change nearly impossible.
If you're learning English and you constantly tell yourself, my accent is terrible, you're not going to seek out speaking opportunities, are you?
Not at all. That negativity becomes a habit of thinking that has to be consciously corrected.
And this internal battle, I feel like it leads us directly to the final major trap.
It does. Waiting for motivation.
This is maybe the most common misunderstanding of all. People say, I'll start my English practice when I feel energized and ready, or I'll start that difficult grammar module when I feel motivated enough to focus.
Yes, the search for that magical, perfect burst of inspiration like a lightning bolt is going to hit you.
Right.
But here is the critical secret that successful people understand, and the sources stress this heavily. Motivation is not something you wait for.
What is it?
Motivation is a result of action. It is the reward, not the prerequisite. It comes after you take the first difficult step, not before.
Wow. Say that again.
Motivation comes after the action. You don't wait to feel motivated to start studying. You start studying in the small progress you make. Mastering one new phrasal verb, understanding one complex sentence. That is what motivates you to continue.
I connect with that so profoundly. I remember struggling with a professional challenge a few years ago. I had to learn a whole new coding language, something I knew I needed to start, but I just kept avoiding it. I kept waiting for the perfect moment to feel completely ready, energized, sure of the outcome. I thought, I need to feel confident first. But that moment never came.
Never does.
The motivation only started flowing after I finally forced myself to just take the first tiny, difficult step, opening the manual and completing one small tutorial. The action created the inspiration.
That's such a powerful distinction. I felt the exact same way when I was tackling a massive project. I kept thinking, ugh, I'm too tired to start this huge task today.
Right.
But the moment I opened the document and just completed one single small section, I realized, oh, I did that. It wasn't that bad. Maybe I can do one more.
And that feeling of small, concrete success.
That's the engine. That is what generates the motivation you thought you needed beforehand.
So the foundational step for any transformation is a deep understanding of these four barriers. The fear of failure, the paralysis from a lack of direction, the limiting power of negative self-talk, and this huge misconception that we must wait for motivation.
Exactly. Recognizing these obstacles is the active process of dismantling them and paving the way for real sustainable transformation.
Okay, so we've identified the problems. Now let's talk solutions.
Now that we've thoroughly recognized what holds us back, those internal obstacles and external traps, we can move decisively on to implementing solutions.
Good.
And the focus shifts entirely away from those dramatic, unsustainable overnight transformations.
And toward what?
Toward gradual, reliable, and consistent change. This brings us to the core mechanism of success explored in the sources. The power of small, daily improvements, often called the 1% rule.
Okay, the 1% rule. This is where the math starts to get really interesting because it's so counterintuitive.
It is.
We think we need to make these massive changes, a 100% overhaul of our study schedule or our lifestyle. But the 1% rule demonstrates that if you focus on improving just 1% every single day, mathematically, you become approximately 37 times better in a single year.
37 times better. It's an exponential gain, not a linear one.
That's incredible.
27 times. The concept of the 1% rule relies entirely on compounding.
Okay, let's define that. That's a key B2 concept.
It is. It's usually reserved for finance, but we're applying it to personal growth. Compounding means that small efforts build upon the success of the previous effort, and those successes build on each other, accelerating the overall growth curve.
So it's like a snowball rolling down a hill.
That's a perfect analogy. If you are 1% better today than you were yesterday, that single improvement is almost invisible. It's just a minute of extra English listening, maybe. But because these small efforts compound over 365 days, the total result is astronomical.
I love that because it emphasizes consistency over unsustainable intensity.
Right.
Most people try to study English for 8 hours straight on a weekend. They get exhausted, and then they do nothing the rest of the week because they're burnt out.
That's a flat, erratic trajectory.
Exactly. But consistently doing 1% every day, studying for 30 minutes, rain or shine, even when you don't feel like it, that's reliable growth. It minimizes burnout and maximizes that all-important momentum.
Now, let's introduce a critical nuance here, a deeper analysis, because this concept is sometimes oversimplified. One challenge raised by our sources is, why does the 1% rule feel like it's failing sometimes? It's because the gains are invisible for a long, long time.
Ah, yes. For intermediate English learners, this is crucial. You might practice using definite articles perfectly for 3 months, but you don't feel that much better after 90 days. You hit a plateau.
And that's the deceptive nature of the growth process. The period where you see no visible change is what James Clear calls the plateau of latent potential.
The plateau of latent potential. I like that.
You are building capacity underneath the surface, organizing vocabulary, strengthening neurological connections, but the output hasn't exploded yet. It takes consistency to break through that plateau.
So the person who quits on day 150 because they feel stuck.
They miss the explosive compounding effect that was about to happen on day 180.
And that ties directly into the concept of habits shaping your identity, right?
Exactly. Small changes, while they seem minor initially, fundamentally redefine who you are over the long term. If you commit to practicing English speaking for just 5 minutes every day, you stop being someone who wishes they spoke English.
And you become someone who practices English.
Right. And that shift in identity is far more powerful than any immediate increase in vocabulary.
So let's focus on some micro habits that embody this 1%. We are not talking about signing up for a massive expensive boot camp or quitting your job to study abroad.
No, absolutely not. We're talking about sustainable, tiny habits you can layer into your existing day.
Like what?
For example, instead of committing to reading a whole English book, just commit to reading 10 minutes of an English news article while you drink your morning coffee.
Doable.
Or, if grammar is your weak spot, use a flashcard app for 5 minutes during your commute, focusing on one tricky structure like passive voice or reported speech. That small effort, repeated daily, makes your brain prioritize that knowledge.
And to make this real, let's recall that powerful anecdote from the source.
The one about fluency.
Yeah. Someone became fluent in English simply by listening to podcasts every day on their walk to work.
Right.
They didn't start with some complex, intense study plan that demanded hours of concentration. They chose one small, consistent step listening for 20 minutes and just stuck with it for years.
And that consistency, that commitment to the 1% rule, resulted in fluency, a massive achievement from a tiny, non-negotiable daily activity.
So the takeaway here is crucial for overcoming that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Yes.
If you are listening right now and feeling defeated by your goals, you don't need to revolutionize your life today. You just need to pick one small habit, 1% improvement, maybe it's just reviewing 3 new words, and start it today.
Don't wait for a feeling of readiness. The success of that small action will then compound and motivate the next action.
So we've established that consistent action is the engine of change. But here's the often overlooked secret. Action without the right foundation, the right internal operating system, will eventually fail. The foundation we need is a strong mindset.
How we think about change.
Exactly. How we think about change, progress, and our own capabilities makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Your mindset is the architect of your personal progress. And if the architect believes the structure is flawed from the beginning, the structure will never get built.
So this is where we bring in that transformative concept.
The fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, largely developed by Carol Dweck.
This is a non-negotiable concept for successful learning.
It really is.
The fixed mindset is the belief that your core qualities like intelligence, talent, or, crucially, language ability are unchangeable. They're fixed.
Right. People trapped in this mindset say things like, I'll never be good at this, or I can't learn grammar. I just wasn't born with that logical skill.
And they view failure not as a temporary setback,
But as direct evidence of being fundamentally flawed. When they make a mistake speaking English, they retreat, convinced they're a failure.
But the growth mindset is the opposite.
Conversely, the growth mindset is the belief that abilities and intelligence are fluid and can be developed through dedication and effort.
People with this mindset use conditional language.
Exactly. I can improve, or I don't know this yet, but I can learn it. They view failure as necessary feedback, a piece of information they can use to adjust their trajectory and try again.
The difference in potential outcomes based solely on this internal belief system it's vast. To achieve fluency, you have to adopt the growth mindset.
And this belief system is physically supported by the amazing way our brain works. This brings us to a slightly more complex but incredibly powerful concept.
Okay, let's unpack it.
The reticular activating system, or RAS.
The RAS. Let's really dedicate some time to this because it's a game changer.
The RAS is essentially your brain's sophisticated filtration system. Think of it as a highly personalized, targeted search engine, or maybe a spotlight that illuminates only what is relevant to you.
So filters things out.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are constantly bombarded with millions of pieces of sensory information, sounds, sights, thoughts, and the RAS's job is to decide what's important enough to bring to your conscious attention and what to ignore.
And it bases that decision on what?
On what you focus on, your current goals, and your deepest internal beliefs.
Let's use a powerful visual analogy. Let's say you decide you want to learn the English word ubiquitous.
Meaning present everywhere.
Right. Before you learned it, your brain just ignored it. But now that you've actively made it a focus, your RAS signals, alert, important information.
And suddenly you see it everywhere.
Suddenly you hear or read ubiquitous everywhere, in articles, in movies, and songs. Not because the word's usage increased, but because your brain was trained to notice it.
And that exact mechanism applies directly to your self-talk and your language goals. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy.
How so?
If you constantly repeat, I can't do this, I will fail at learning English, Your RAS is diligently trained to find proof of that failure.
Hmm.
It will focus intensely on every single mistake you make, every time you misunderstand something, and it will filter out all the small progress you've achieved.
It validates your negative belief.
It does. But the reverse is so incredibly powerful and shows why mindset mastery is essential.
So if you actively use positive affirmations,
Right. If you say, I am improving my English every day, or I am capable of understanding complex tenses, your brain shifts its focus. It starts looking for progress.
your RAS starts highlighting the new word you used correctly, the successful conversation you had.
Or the grammar rule you finally understood. Your brain finds the proof to support your belief in improvement.
So when we talk about reprogramming your mind, what does that actually mean? Let's clarify that for everyone.
Good question. It's not magic, it's neuroplasticity in action.
Yeah.
It means changing the automatic default thoughts your brain runs. Instead of letting your brain automatically gravitate toward negative or limiting thoughts, you actively choose and repeat positive, supporting thoughts until they become the new, constructive, automatic setting.
And the sources give us 3 key tools to do this, right? To help us reprogram and foster a growth mindset.
Yes. The first is affirmations. This is systematic, positive self-talk. It involves repeating phrases daily like, I am mastering English grammar, or my speaking confidence is growing every day.
So you're giving direct positive input into your RAS. You're telling your brain what to focus on.
Precisely. The second is visualization. This is a critical tool for reducing anxiety related to language performance. You have to see yourself succeeding.
So you actually close your eyes and imagine it.
Yes. Truly imagine yourself having a fluid conversation in English without hesitation, or successfully giving a presentation to a native English-speaking client. This act of visualization tricks your brain into creating pre-existing positive memories, reducing the fear of the unknown and making the goal feel achievable.
And the last one.
And finally, gratitude practice. This is foundational. When you intentionally focus on what's going well, even small things, like the fact that you understood a complex sentence in this deep dive or that you have resources to learn, you train your brain to focus on positive factors.
And that leads to identifying opportunities over obstacles.
Exactly. It shifts your focus from what you lack fluency to what you possess, the ability to learn and the progress you've already made.
That's the true power of mindset mastery. It's about training your most powerful tool, your brain, to work for you, filtering out the negative signals, and consistently highlighting the positive path forward.
Which brings us back to action.
So we've covered the internal barriers and built a strong, growth-oriented mindset. We have the foundation. But now we need to return to the concept of action, specifically focusing on overcoming that final paralyzing hurdle, waiting for full readiness. We all know that feeling of wanting to start something, but needing just one more thing before we take the plunge, whether it's one more chapter of the grammar book or one more week of practicing vocabulary.
Yes, this is the deep psychological cost of the perfection trap. So many people believe, implicitly or explicitly, that they need to be completely ready, fully prepared, and 100% confident before they take any action.
But that's not how it works.
Not at all. Here's the difficult truth that the sources emphasize. You will never feel 100% ready. That feeling of readiness, that feeling of confidence, is a reward for action, not a prerequisite for it.
Progress, therefore, comes before confidence, not the other way around.
The action fuels the confidence.
Think about this in the most relatable English example we can offer. Hesitating to start speaking. I remember being perfectly comfortable with reading and writing technical documents, but when it came to speaking, my internal walls just went up.
You froze.
I was paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes, of using the wrong pronunciation or forgetting a key word in the heat of the moment. And I kept telling myself, I need to know 5,000 more words before I speak.
And what was the emotional cost of that waiting game?
Waiting only made the anxiety worse.
Yeah.
The muscles required for real-time speech, the ability to think quickly, manage pressure, handle awkward silences, they atrophied because I wasn't using them.
So the longer you postponed speaking, the more monumental and terrifying the task became in your mind. This is the danger of seeking perfection. It guarantees stagnation.
Absolutely. But when I finally took that first imperfect step, I forced myself into a conversation group with a native speaker who was patient but firm, I realized something profound.
What was that?
Once I started speaking, even with stuttering and egregious errors, that action immediately built confidence. Each conversation, even the clumsy ones where I had to mime half the words, proved that I was surviving, I was communicating, and most importantly, I was learning.
So the mistakes became data points.
Exactly. They were part of the learning process, not a final judgment on my ability.
And that leads us to a concept that serves as a lifeline for anyone trying to change or learn something new.
Oh, I love this one.
Done is better than perfect.
Yes.
This phrase is so valuable for intermediate learners because it encourages shipping, delivering, and completing work even if it has flaws. Waiting for perfection means you never start.
Too many people delay action because they want everything to be just right, impeccably organized, and without any flaws.
Think about an essay. If you write an English essay that has 10 minor mistakes, but it's finished and submitted, you will get feedback and learn 10 times more than if you spent 3 extra weeks trying to make the first paragraph absolutely flawless and never actually completed the assignment.
The result of imperfect action is always superior to the result of perfect planning that never leaves the desk.
That's the critical difference. Imperfect action creates momentum, and momentum is what drives us forward. If you wait for perfection, you remain frozen.
Whether it's learning English, launching a business, or finally starting that workout routine.
The goal is simply to begin, to create that initial forward movement.
And that initial imperfect action forms what we call the momentum loop.
Explain that.
You take that first, small, imperfect action, you write that clumsy essay, you join that scary conversation group. That action creates momentum because you've accomplished something, no matter how small.
Okay.
That momentum then increases your confidence because you see physical evidence of progress. That increased confidence makes the next action easier.
And the leap continues, growing stronger every single day.
And the entire engine starts with the courage to be imperfect.
We spend a lot of time discussing internal factors, overcoming barriers, adopting the right mindset, and embracing imperfect action. But we cannot afford to ignore the external world.
Right.
The massive, often underestimated role our environment plays in our habits and decisions. It is not just about what we do, but who and what we surround ourselves with.
This is a powerful section, and one that requires some brutal, honest self-reflection.
It does.
Our environment is absolutely crucial because it either supports or actively undermines our efforts without us even realizing it. The energy, the habits, and the expectations of the people around us have a tremendous, often unconscious effect on our own trajectory.
This principle is encapsulated beautifully in that famous saying,
I think I know which one you mean.
"You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with."
Yes. Think about that for a second. If your 5 closest friends spend their time avoiding challenge, criticizing others' efforts, and complaining about their lives,
That behavior, that low bar for achievement, will statistically and psychologically rub off on you. It becomes your default average.
and if you are trying to improve your English and you are constantly surrounded by negative, unmotivated people who tell you that learning a new language is too difficult or that you should just give up.
It's incredibly difficult to maintain motivation and positivity. You're constantly fighting against the gravitational pull of their low expectations and their fixed mindsets.
But the reverse is true, and it's transformative.
It is. If you surround yourself with positive, goal-driven individuals, people who are actively learning, building, and growing, their energy, their drive, and their successes will also rub off on you.
Their high expectations become your new normal.
Exactly. You naturally start to adopt their good habits because those habits are modeled for you and celebrated within that circle. The environment literally makes the 1% improvement easier.
So the challenge for the listener is clear. We need to actively shape our environment, both physically and digitally, to encourage growth. This isn't just about selecting friends, it's about curating everything that influences your mind.
So the first practical tip for creating a growth environment is to actively follow inspiration.
Okay.
Seek out positive influences. For an English learner, this means being deliberate about your digital environment. Curate your social media feeds to only show accounts that focus on personal development, language tips, or the success stories of other learners.
So you're exposing yourself to positivity and high standards, which shifts your mindset subtly but relentlessly over time.
The second tip, and one we champion here at Global English Podcast, is join learning communities.
Yes. This means finding groups, whether they were physical meetups or, more likely for an international audience, focused online communities. The importance of having people to practice with cannot be overstated. When I felt stuck in my language learning journey, joining an online community provided not just practice opportunities, but essential emotional support. We shared our struggles, we celebrated our small grammatical breakthroughs, and that shared momentum was essential. When you join a community that values growth, you are naturally pulled along by the collective energy. You're motivated to show up for your practice because others are expecting you, and you learn from their mistakes and their breakthroughs, which minimizes the risk of burnout.
It makes the journey much more sustainable because you're not relying solely on your own internal motivation, which, it fluctuates.
And the third tip is arguably the hardest because it requires setting boundaries.
What is it?
Reduce negativity. This might mean limiting the time you spend with constant complainers, those people who drain your energy every time you see them and try to pull you down to their level.
And it also means aggressively cutting down on excessive negative news consumption or social media spirals that leave you feeling anxious or demotivated.
You have to protect your mental space and your RAS from the filters of negativity.
That environment optimization is so key to maintaining your chosen path. I remember making a very conscious decision to limit my exposure to overly cynical or negative commentary online.
And what happened?
The simple act of unfollowing certain news feeds gave me back so much mental energy that I could then invest in something productive, like studying new English idioms. The right environment creates the necessary momentum, making it much easier to grow and stay on your desired trajectory.
So here is a reflective question for you, the listener, right now.
Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with, including the digital influencers you follow most closely? Be honest with yourself.
Are they helping you grow toward your goals, like English fluency or career success? Or are they inadvertently holding you back by setting a low average for achievement?
If they aren't pushing you to be better, it might be time to look for supplementary influences that inspire and uplift you.
As we bring this comprehensive deep dive into transformation to a close, we have to circle back to the language.
Yes.
Learning English is about connecting concepts, and knowing the specific terminology enhances your ability to understand, apply, and discuss change with greater precision. It helps you articulate not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it.
Which is the mark of an advanced thinker. Absolutely. We've covered some really powerful intermediate and advanced vocabulary in this deep dive. Let's briefly summarize and model some of that key language.
Okay.
This isn't just about definitions, it's about application in complex sentences, suitable for B2 usage.
So we talked extensively about the importance of shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Now, instead of just saying, I believe I can get better, you can articulate a much more sophisticated thought.
For example,
despite encountering a challenging English text, I'm consciously applying a growth mindset, viewing my current difficulty not as a limitation, but as crucial feedback for future study.
That's great. We also discussed the mathematical engine of success, compounding.
Right. This B2 concept makes your goals feel less overwhelming. You can now tell a fellow learner. I realized the true power of consistent effort when I understood how small, daily actions related to vocabulary acquisition could lead to an exponential increase in fluency through the process of compounding.
And remember that powerful but subtle word we use for the barriers, insidious.
Yes. You can use this to describe internal obstacles. The most challenging barrier to my English-speaking practice has been the insidious effect of negative self-talk that slowly eroded my confidence.
And the neurological concept we explored, the reticular activating system, RAS. You can apply that to your learning habits.
For instance, by focusing intently on the pronunciation of English sounds, I am training my reticular activating system to prioritize those specific auditory inputs, helping me distinguish subtle differences between vowels.
Finally, we talked about affirmations as a tool for reprogramming. Instead of saying, I tell myself positive things, you can use the more precise term.
Like, I use daily affirmations and visualization exercises to manage my anxiety before engaging in English conversations.
Understanding these terms is fundamental to your ability to think about self-improvement clearly and discuss them with other learners. They give you the power to articulate complex ideas better and discuss your trajectory towards success.
And we want to ensure you have the practical tools to reinforce everything we discussed today. That's why we prepared a special resource detailed in the source material, a free PDF guide associated with this deep dive.
This guide is tailored specifically for the intermediate English learner. It includes all the key takeaways from today's discussion, so you have robust summary notes. It also contains comprehension questions to test your understanding of these concepts, like the difference between momentum and motivation, which is great reading practice.
And crucially, it includes vocabulary-focused exercises and grammar exercises based on the specific intermediate and advanced vocabulary we used to help you build confidence in applying these new words and phrases correctly.
It provides a direct, practical tool for reinforcing both the life concepts like the 1% rule and your core English skills simultaneously. It's the perfect companion to this deep dive, ensuring that the knowledge you've gained isn't just heard, but is understood, applied, and remembered.
All right, let's wrap this up.
So, let's bring this all together and issue a final thought. If we had to distill the entire deep dive down to one central, actionable lesson, it would be this. You possess far more control over your life and your ability to learn English than you currently realize. Yeah. Transformation is not waiting for a miraculous shift in luck. It comes from small, almost invisible changes, consistently applied, supported by a deliberate growth mindset, and fostered by a positive, goal-oriented environment.
And remember that progress is not a straight line, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. It is inherently incremental.
Yes.
There will be days when you feel like you only improved 0.01% or maybe even regressed 1%, but every single step, no matter how small or difficult, gets you closer to your goal. The person who succeeds is the person who simply refuses to quit making that 1% effort.
And now, for your micro challenge. We want you to internalize the lesson that done is better than perfect. Think of one thing related to your English learning that you've been postponing. Maybe it's recording your voice to check pronunciation, starting a tricky grammar review, or researching a new online community to join. Whatever it is, take one small, imperfect step today.
Not tomorrow, not next week.
Just one tiny action right now that puts you on the path of 1% improvement.
Let us know in the comments what small change you are making today. We love hearing about your progress. And if this deep dive gave you that moment of clarity or that necessary spark of motivation, please subscribe, share it with a friend who is also on a growth journey, and leave us a review for the Global English Podcast.
I'm Jordan. See you next time.
And I'm Taylor. Bye.